You're now listening to the Boys in the Booth podcast with your hosts, Harper Cody, Chad Melbourne, and Casey Abrams. New episodes every Monday on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Good evening and welcome to episode 150 of the Boys in the Booth podcast. Cody, Abrams, and Melbourne all with you on this Monday night after a week off. Guys, how we doing? And this is a nice little milestone for us. It feels like yesterday that we hit our 100th episode, and now we're at 150. That's a nice number, and it's nice to be back with you guys. How you doing?
Feels like yesterday we were crammed at a table in your parents' basement recording on makeshift equipment. But yeah, 100 was also yesterday too, so that's good. I'm doing great because I just got word that the outdoor rink is now open in Brockville, and I will be heading back there Friday for 2 weeks. So I'm going to spend as much time out there as possible. And I love playing on Old M. They have such a great setup there and so much fun.
I'm super excited for that too, Case. When I go home, that's exactly what I'm going to do every day that I can, because that's the best part about coming home for Christmas, honestly. I mean, seeing family, the presents, meals, whatever. But playing hockey on the ODR, that's one of the best. The only thing about Old M that I despise is the fact that they only flood like once a day, it seems. So I hope that this year they do something different and start to flood a bit more, because like by the end of the day, by the time you're done doing whatever you have to do throughout the day, for most people that's working or, doing some sort of activity, it's garbage ice. So I really hope this year they start to flood more, because that would be nice.
Well, there's
also excited to go back to Steve's as well, because ice is always great.
There's always that one guy out there that he's drank his third double-double. He's wearing a long-sleeve T-shirt and spends about 80% of his time shoveling. So you got to appreciate those guys when they don't flood nearly enough there. They have a Zamboni. What are you doing? Let me drive the thing. I'll do it.
I know. And there's the roof, too. So, you'd think it wouldn't get that bad. But the problem is there's 150 people out there at one time, all the time. So I'm not looking forward to that, but hopefully we can find some good times throughout the days, guys, and get some good games going, because that's what it's all about. And if we get there at a good time and there's not that many people, maybe I'll even throw on my gear for a day. So that's always fun.
Perfect. Yeah, looking forward to getting down there. And if I remember correctly, guys, was it Christmas Eve last year that we had probably our best game down there? Good group of guys using the benches. We had two goalies. Was that last year or maybe a couple of years ago? Yeah, that was.
It all blends together for me. But yeah, we've definitely had some good times there. Good games.
Yeah, for sure. Alrighty, guys, let's get into a little fantasy corner. And Case, we'll start with you.
I had a monster week last week, not points-wise, but just the way it came down to things. I was losing going into Sunday, and I was talking to Chad kind of beforehand, before the game started, saying, I'm a little worried because a lot of my guys have been underperforming this week, and I don't know how things are going to work out. Then Taylor Prossers, who I was playing, he had Mikko Rantanen score all 3 goals in a 3-2 win for Colorado, and I was like, man, this is not looking good. I called out David Krejci to have a big game for me because he's a big game player, and they're playing Vegas. He was hurt, didn't play that game, so it looked real bleak. But that LA Columbus game paid off for me. Kempe had a goal, and Patrick Laine a goal and 2 assists to put me above. Then Adam Lowry potted one, and eventually I kind of, pulled away and got the win. So that was a big one for me. And I don't know, fun week. It was kind of back and forth with me and Pross all week.
Nice. To start my week, last week, I was playing No Regretskis, who is Dylan. And he has a pretty good squad. And at the start of the week, it was projected 219 for myself to 212 for Dylan. So it was supposed to be a pretty close week. And as the week went on, it was for the most part. But then over the last few days, I don't know what happened. A few of my guys just kind of went off. Boone Jenner had 21 points. Lawson Krause had 17 points. Konechny had 18. Dougie Hamilton had 21. And it finished 236 to 175. So it wasn't the close matchup that I was expecting at the start of the week. But that's not really what I want to talk about in this Fantasy Corner quick. I just wanted to mention that there are some wicked trades being thrown around right here. And by wicked, I mean severely in favor of one team, and I don't know why. Remy he's the manager of Will Nye the Science Guy, or is it Will Nye the Scoring Guy? It's one of those. He's been throwing out some crazy trades. I wanted to get your guys' feedback on those because I feel like I'm a one-man show in the group chat, like criticizing these trades as the commissioner, but like some of them were pretty bad. Like, so if I'm remembering correctly, the one was Cole Caulfield, and who was he traded one for one for? Braden Shen. So right away, like that's a tough one. The other one was Lucas Raymond for Cairo. No. Wait, wasn't Cole Caulfield included in one of these?
Yeah, Cole Caulfield for Braden Shen.
Okay, and then
for Raymond.
Yes, and then the third one, thanks, Case, for having my back there, because I have no idea what I'm talking about if it's not in front of me. It's been a long day. And then the third one was Eichel for Jamie Benn, 1-for-1. Eichel going to Eichel Tower. That's John, who just picked up Jamie Benn off waivers. And Jamie Benn, who, again, was just on waivers, who a lot of guys had a waiver claim in on, but ultimately Eichel Tower got him. He's going to Remy's team. So what did you guys think of those three trades? I personally think that the Raymond trade and the Eichel trade are relatively fair. I don't love them, but I'm leaning towards allowing them. But then the Caulfield for Shen trade, like that's ridiculous, right?
So what we saw here was like a rabid animal being backed into a corner because Remy is in the bottom right now. He just lost to the last place team, Jake's slam dunk team, who had Tage Thompson on his bench when he had 5 goals and assists in a game. So he's just clawing and scratching and doing anything he can to get himself out of that corner right now. The 2 trades were with one team, and if one of the trades was flipped, then I thought that trade was fair. If it was let me get this right. If it was if it was Kyrou and Shen for Caulfield and Raymond, that would be fair in my mind. But I feel like Remy got the short end of the stick on both of those trades with the same team. So I was a little puzzled about that one. Eichel's on the IR and he kind of is there frequently. So I don't know. Jamie Benn's having quite the season for himself so far, but I know he's playing down on the third line. Occasionally, he's playing with Wyatt Johnson and a couple one other guy, young guy, I think Dellandrea maybe.
Yep.
So I don't know how that trade's gonna pan out for him. I'll be interested to follow it, especially when Ben was claimed on waivers yesterday. I tried to claim him myself, but I wasn't high enough in the waiver.
Oh, you did too, Harp. I didn't know that.
I did. I put in a claim for him, and I dropped Connor Sherry yesterday, and I tried to put in a claim for Jamie Benn, and I got all excited, and now I'm bummed out about it.
Okay, so I wanted to say this on Jamie Benn. I didn't tell you guys this, but I was at dinner with John at a nice Italian spot, and he brings up fantasy, and we're talking about it, and I'm kind of just roasting him because he's in the bottom of the league, and he pulls out his phone and he's like, can you just show me like how to even manage this team? And I show him how to set his lines for the week because, he first of all, he didn't even have the app, so he had to download the app. He was like you, Harper, who does it on his computer. So I show him how to set his lines for the week, so he's good for that now. And then I showed him how to make a waiver claim. And I was with John when he made the waiver claim for Jamie Benn because, first of all, selfishly, I knew I wasn't going to get him. Second of all, for the good of the league, I thought it would make sense that a bottom feeder team get a good player and be able to do something with them because John, like I said, his team is 0-9-0, okay, through 9 weeks here. So I thought I'd throw him a bone there. That's what I did. That's how we got Ben. And then he turned that into Eichel, which, to be honest, in drafting, I stayed away from Eichel because I think he's a bit of a Band-Aid and his production is kind of wish-washy, you know, it's up and down. But Ben, I was originally against drafting him, but I actually picked him up in my other league off of waivers when he was ranked around 40th because he's been having a good season and the Stars roll lines. So that's something that is beneficial for the owner of Jamie Benn. But anyways, wanted to share that with you.
I was trying to get Ben and drop Owen Power to do that because Owen Power is killing me. He plays 25 minutes a night in 9-goal games and gets 0 points. Or 24 games in a 6-goal night, 0 points. Gets 0.75 fantasy points. I'm like, how can you play so much and do so little?
Yeah. I know. I don't get it either, man. Like, I think he's got just the 10 assists this year, which is good. Like, he's been very good, but I'm a little surprised myself that the points aren't exactly there, and I thought that he'd have a goal by now, for sure.
It takes longer for defensemen, so it is what it is.
I know, but man, come on. You're scoring 9 goals and you've been on the ice for 24 and a half minutes.
Yeah, no, that's absurd. Like, Case, we've talked about this over the last couple weeks, but Harp, I was kind of creeping your week last week in fantasy because I saw that you played your brother. Why don't you share how that turned out?
Yeah, so not good, as expected. The youngest and smartest Cody brother has a good squad for sure, so he beat me by like 30 this past week, and I think he's at 6-3 now. He's looking pretty good. I mean, you know, I'm still 5-4. I won last week, and so, you know, still above 500, which is good. But yeah, just not a lot of production from my guys. And you know, I think a couple of things like Jeff Skinner, his suspension kind of hurt me a little bit. You know, he couldn't play that second game against Pittsburgh. I don't know what got into him. He cross-checks Jake Gensel, in the face.
That was vicious.
And then just,
dirty as hell.
Yeah, it was. I don't know what he was thinking. They got into it pretty good, and then he just went at him with that. So not impressed. But he's been one of my best performers this year, and then just not a lot on the back end. But I will say that a guy who I really needed to step up, and even though I lost, this guy did step up, and it looks like this team is finally starting to get going, and that's Evgeny Kuznetsov of the Washington Capitals. He was one of my best performers last week, as well as Pierre-Luc Dubois. So I was glued to the TV screen on Sunday night watching those two play each other in Winnipeg between the Caps and the Jets. Charlie Lindgren, by the way, first star of the week in the NHL. So anyway, so yeah, tough loss, but M's got a good team, and it's on to the next matchup this week.
Lindgren as well. That setup with the black jerseys, the reverse retros, did you see that? That setup was gorgeous, like one of the best I've seen all year, so I wanted to say that. And to conclude Fantasy Corner, I'll repeat what I already posted in the fantasy chat earlier today. Top 5 and bottom 5 in the league right now. Bottom 5, 20th, Eichel Tower. 19th, Jake's Slam Dunk team, who got their first win this week, and I'm sure he's pumped if he even knows. 18th, I took the walk to Poland. 17th, Mail Order Brides. And in 16th, Will Nye the Science Guy, as we mentioned. 1 to 5, myself, number 1, 9-0. Kuznetsov's third line, number 2, also 9-0. He's been on my heels since the very first week, and it's kind of scaring me a little bit because I feel like as soon as I get a tough matchup and he gets a little bit of an easy one, things can flip-flop.
Dude, he has the least points against in the entire league. He gets an easy matchup every week.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. That actually makes me feel a bit better.
I didn't know that either.
No Regretskis in third, 6-3-0. Number 4, Nico is our captain, also 6-3-0, and squeaking into that number 5 spot with less than 1,500 total points for, as Alan so kindly pointed out in the group chat, is Hatrick Swayze, and that is the, in your words, Harper, the younger and smarter Cody brother. So there you go. That's how the league. Chad. Yeah, that's how the league shakes out right now.
All right, looking forward to another week of fantasy hockey in the Yahoo Boys in the Booth Fantasy Hockey League. Okay, guys, so we've got a pretty interesting episode topic for this week, and it was pretty funny earlier because I think the three of us were kind of walking on eggshells, being fearful that we would all get the same guys or whatever, or a couple of us would, and then the other would be fine. But I think we're going to be okay. So we'll try this. And what I'm talking about is best waiver claims in the last couple of years here. In the last few years. So and this is very timely after, of course, former first-round pick Eeli Tolvanen gets claimed from the Nashville Predators to the Seattle Kraken. So a guy that is still young, that hasn't put everything together yet, and pretty interesting claim here by Seattle.
Mode legend Eeli Tolvanen.
Yes.
That guy scores 40 goals a year in GM mode in the NHL games.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
I swear, you sim one season and the guy's like 88 overall, 45 goals, like 90 points. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And by the way, I should have reworded our episode topic. So best waiver claims in recent memory. That sounds a lot better. So anyway, Case, we'll go to you first. And if I'm remembering this correctly and what you were saying in the group chat earlier, it's a guy that went to a team in the Metro Division where your New Jersey Devils are. So let's hear yours first.
This podcast is sponsored by Liquid IV. Winter is back, and whether you're playing pond hockey or nursing an eggnog hangover this holiday season, Liquid IV has you covered. Just one stick of Liquid IV in 16 ounces of water hydrates faster and more efficiently than water alone. It contains 5 essential vitamins, B3, B5, B6, B12, and vitamin C. It's made with 3 times the electrolytes of traditional sports drinks, premium ingredients, non-GMO, and free from gluten, dairy, and soy. There are plenty of awesome flavors too, but my personal favorite is lemon lime. Get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use the promo code boys_in_the_booth. That's 20% off anything when you order using the promo code boys_in_the_booth at liquidiv.com. Experience better hydration today with Liquid IV. This podcast is sponsored by the ticket app SeatGeek. SeatGeek takes all the confusion out of buying tickets, making it quick and easy to get the best deals on tickets to your favorite sporting events. Plus, Boys in the Booth listeners get $20 off their first ticket purchase on SeatGeek with the promo code BOYSINTHEBOOTH in all caps. So click the link in the description down below to download the app, and remember to get your discounted tickets using the code BOYSINTHEBOOTH in all caps. Get great seats for a fraction of the cost with SeatGeek.
Yeah, I picked this one because there's just a whole story going on here, and it really goes full circle. And I do like the player as well, although he kind of sucked when he played for my team. But anyways, I'll get into it here. It's Michael Grabner. The story here that makes this so interesting to me is how fleeced Florida got here, or how big of a mistake they made. And that they traded Keith Ballard, coming off a career year, and Victor Oreskevich, young at the time, but only had 6 points in 50 games that year, for Grabner, Steve Bernier, and a first rounder in that year. So a lot of value there. So for Vancouver, Ballard played 148 games of hockey, and before moving on 3 years later, so not much there. Oreskevich played 17 games for Vancouver, getting 3 assists and retiring 2 years later. So didn't work out for Vancouver at all. Florida must have won this one, right? The first round pick was Quentin Howden, who played 89 games for Florida and 8 for Winnipeg before taking his career to Europe. So that first round pick didn't work out. Steve Bernier played 1 season for Florida before moving to New Jersey, and in a team effort with Scuderi and Jeff Carter, ruined my chances of win a season where the Devils win the Cup in 2012. Thanks, Steve Bernier. You're my least favorite player. But the worst part of it is Grabner. Florida put him on waivers just 4 months later, where he'd be claimed by the New York Islanders. the future NHL fastest skater in 2011, went on to lead rookie scorers with 34 goals and added 18 helpers for 52 points that year. Good enough for a Calder finalist.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty huge. He had 2 more productive years in the island before, things started to tail off. And to make this story go full circle, he was traded to the Toronto Maple Leafs in a huge package of a lot of nothing, that included Connor Verhaeghe. So that got the ball moving on Connor Verhaeghe, who played in Bridgeport for a bit and then Syracuse and then got to Florida finally. So Florida would like to think of this as trading Keith Ballard and no one for Verhaeghe 6 years from now.
Wow.
So I like how that went full circle. No one really came out on top here except for the Islanders. In the end, Grabner, 640 games played, 175 goals, 101 assists. One of the best penalty killers, kind of in that era. He had the most shorthanded goals in that era, that's for sure. I think he had 7 1 year. So the guy, monster speed, good player, Austrian guy. I love the story here, and this was a great waiver pickup by the Islanders, especially after Florida just acquired him. It's unbelievable to me.
What a crazy story. That's why I wanted to do an episode like this, because there are just some random stories that you forgot about or just never really connected the dots to. So thank you, Case, for that.
Yeah, good digging on this.
Remembering Grabner, the first thing you think of is his incredible speed, right? But Case, I'm glad you mentioned his penalty killing ability too, because I remember when he was playing for the Leafs, I used to think, okay, this guy gets 7 breakaways a game, 4 of them are shorthanded. This guy should have 55 goals every single year. And of course, he didn't have quite the finishing ability as some other guys who might get that many opportunities, but what a hell of a player, man. And I also didn't know that Verhaeghe was the guy, or one of the guys, included in that package. So that's just extra insult to injury for me. Thanks for that one.
No problem. I wanted to get a dig at Toronto always, right? But yeah, it was Verhaeghe, Taylor Beck, defenseman Tom Nilsson, Matthew Finn, and goaltender Christopher Gibson. So a big package there. I don't really know any of the names except Carter Verhaeghe and Tom Nilsson.
Yeah. I think Chris Gibson is still kicking around somewhere, isn't he? In the minors, maybe? But
yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I know that he had a PTO with Arizona, but they ultimately didn't sign him, and of course claimed Connor Ingram off of waivers from Nashville, and John Gillies, who they signed in the summer, is playing with Tucson in the AHL. So yeah, he's kicking around somewhere. Actually, you know what? He might be in the Seattle organization. You'd have to check that. But anyway, before we move on, the only thing I'll say about Grabner, yes, first things that come to mind, you guys already mentioned them, the speed and his great ability on the penalty kill, but the guy is ripped. Absolutely ripped, man. He is just it's crazy the shape that he's in. He looks like he could still play, and I'll see the odd Instagram video or whatever of him just playing with his kids in the backyard, and I'll see the odd one here and there. He's pretty active on social media, I think, and man, the guy's in incredible shape too, and he's got sleeves and of tattoos and everything, and the guy just looks like a warrior, and he was a great player. So
sounds like Harp has a little bit of a crush,
man.
Yeah, no, I got into this one. I was following the rabbit hole. Gibson's playing for Coachella right now.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. So Harp was right.
All right, awesome. Case, that was a good one, man. Well done. I was kind of interested as to how far some of us would go in the years with these. So yeah, no, that was great. All right, Chad, let's get yours, man.
Sure. So as always in these things, I always have a main player that I want to speak about, but also an honorable mention. So my honorable mention I'll bring up first. Actually, both these players are known for their time playing in Montreal, which is kind of weird, given the fact that I'm a Leafs fan. But I was just looking back, year by year, looking at the biggest waiver claims, and these two players stood out. The first one is, maybe a little bit lesser. It's Sam Montembeault. He was claimed by Montreal in 2021 from Florida, and that was like at the very beginning of the season. Actually, both these players were claimed at the very beginning of the season. When you place a guy on waivers and you hope for the best, and he doesn't clear, and that's what happened. Montembeault was drafted 3rd round in 2015, and since then he's played parts of 2 seasons for the Habs. And last year he wasn't great, I'll admit. So people looking at this guy is like the best waiver claim ever or in recent memory. I wouldn't necessarily say that. That's why he's an honorable mention, because he wasn't great last year. But this season, through 9 games, he's been pretty damn good, guys. He has a positive goal saved above expected. It's, 2.2 goals saved above expected. And through 9 games, he has a 297 goals against and a 908 save on a team that, frankly, isn't that good. So he's been fairly good for the Montreal Canadiens since they got him in 2021, again, as a waiver claim. So I thought that was a nice, easy, honorable mention.
Yeah, he was put into a tough situation last year, and it didn't turn out well for him. I remember he was part of what seemed like a goalie carousel last season, before the season, where everyone was just claiming goalies off waivers, and you couldn't keep up with which backup was where, and Comrie's going to the Devils, then back to Winnipeg, and snip snap. It's like all over the place. So yeah, he was definitely one of those. And with Carey Price, he got to play quite a few games, Montembeault, but yeah, definitely working out for him so far this year.
Yeah, this year's been good. I mentioned last year because he was one of, I think, 5 goalies to play for Montreal last year. They had him, Price, McNiven, I think Primo, maybe a guy or another 2 guys. So they had a ton of goalies play for that team last year, and again, they weren't overly good, so you can't really hold it against the guy. But this year, like we've said, on a team that is still sort of struggling and is giving up a lot of quality opportunities, he's been pretty good.
I was actually blown away by how good his numbers have been, and I stumbled across them one day editing my rosters in NHL, and had to give him a nice bump, because he's been great in a small sample size. And I honestly, I was so surprised. I thought Jake Allen's numbers would have been better. Just, it seems like he's had so many nights this year where it's like, oh my God, we're messaging Allen in the group chat, and Allen has been standing on his head tonight, and here's 20 saves in the first period, 45 on the night, whatever. But he's playing a lot more games, and the team is not quite there yet. They're going through their rebuild, obviously, although they've been a lot of fun to watch. But Allen is getting the bulk of the games and facing a lot of shots and against the better teams, and so his numbers haven't been as good. But yeah, no, good for Montembeault, obviously a Quebec kid. We've seen what that can do to certain guys, that kind of pressure. Jonathan Drouin, unfortunately, is a guy that comes to mind. But no, man, he's taken an opportunity here with them for sure. It's nice to see.
Yeah, okay, so the player I actually wanted to talk about as maybe one of the best waiver claims in recent memory, at least in my opinion, is Paul Byron, also to the Montreal Canadiens, like I mentioned. So he was claimed in 2015-16 by Montreal from Calgary. He was actually drafted in the 6th round by Buffalo, though, prior to that. He was 26 at the time, and he was making league min when he was claimed. The year prior, he had 6 goals, 13 assists for 19 points in 57 games, so he wasn't setting the league on fire, but there was some potential there, even as a 26-year-old. The problem was, for Paul Byron and the Flames, is that he had a sports hernia surgery in the offseason prior to the 2015-16 year. So after training camp, it was sort of uncertain what was going to happen with him. And, I think there were some questions around his health. So they placed him on waivers at the very start of the season, indicating that he didn't make camp. And Montreal swooped in and picked him up right away. Since then, he's played parts of 7 seasons for the Habs. He scored 20 goals twice. He was actually placed on waivers 3 more times since then, but he signed 2 contracts now with Montreal over the span of that 7 years. The first one was 3 times 3.5 with Montreal, and the second one was 4 times 3.4. So essentially the same contract, and he's made a ton of money playing for Montreal, and he's been a pretty good depth scorer for this team, in the regular season and in the playoffs. So despite the fact that he hasn't played a single game this season because he's on LTIR and, the certainty of his future in the NHL is kind of up in the air, I thought, to get 7 or parts of 7 seasons from a guy on a waiver claim and to extend him twice, I thought that was really, really good value just for picking up a guy who a team, didn't believe in anymore.
Well,
so what do you guys think about Paul?
On top of that, he became he's like a cult player in Montreal, right? Like everyone loves him, and he's kind of like a fan favorite, I guess you'd say. And he has had some pretty monster years for them. Plays like a role player for them. Although in those 20 goals seasons, he was like first line for most of it. I have such a bad taste for Paul Byron because, when you have like one interaction on the internet and it ruins a player for you because of their fan base. Well, I ran into a thread that I don't remember the exact specifics, so it's not going to be, totally fair here for me to rip on him. But it was that 2016-2017 season. He was having a great year, 22 goals, 43 points. And Kopitar had his worst season of his career. He had 52 points in 76 games. I don't remember the exact reason why they were comparing them, but it was something like Kopitar was going to be an all-star, and Montreal fans were saying Paul Byron is better than Kopitar. Why isn't Paul Byron an all-star? Or why isn't Byron going to the Olympics? It was something weird like that. And they were comparing his play to Andrei Kopitar, and I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? I got so frustrated and so angry at Montreal fans reading comments and stuff that I have, for the last 6 years, disliked Paul Byron.
But you gotta love the story. Like, a guy who wasn't proven in Calgary gets claimed, has some very productive years in Montreal, and signs 2 massive tickets when he was making league min.
I'm not saying it's a bad story, and it's definitely a great waiver claim. This one worked out for Montreal. Like, when you can get a guy to be a career player for you, it's pretty great. But like, every time I see or hear Paul Byron's name, I'm like,
That's funny.
That's hilarious and ridiculous at the same time. He was really good there. Like, one of those guys that just a smaller guy, but with a lot of speed and great work ethic, and just would kind of fly under the radar, get you 20 goals, and have a great summer. See you later. And that's kind of what he did. And now, I think is he on LTIR now?
Yeah, he is.
So he's pretty much finished, and they're just letting that the rest of that contract run out. But yeah, during his heyday there in Montreal, he was really good for them for sure.
Yeah, he's on LTIR right now, and from what I read today, just doing some quick research about this waiver claim, is that it's kind of uncertain right now whether he'll return to the NHL. I know he's had a lot of problems. Yeah. I mentioned that sports hernia that he had, so who knows? He's only 33, but by the NHL standards, like, there's still plenty of guys who are doing it. Like, for Christ's sakes, like, Sidney Crosby is leading the league in 5-on-5 points right now, and he's 35. Not comparing the two, Case, just to make sure, so you don't hate me. But no, like, if he gets healthy, maybe he can come back and sign a league min deal. But the overall point was that they had him for 7 years, and he was a waiver claim. So I thought that was great value to be found there.
No, honestly, both great ones from you guys, and good digging for sure, going back a little bit. So, first of all, I'm glad that we didn't run into any of the same ones, and I didn't dig as far as you guys did. I've got a pretty good one, I feel like, from last year, which is hard to believe because it feels like this guy, and he's still young, has been with this team for a while now. And when I saw the date that he was claimed It really surprised me. So I'm talking about Gustav Forsling of the Florida Panthers. And so I was driving home earlier, and I'm trying to just, I'm not on my phone or anything, obviously, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, just recently, think of a good one. And I'm like, you know what, I'm pretty sure Gustav Forsling was a waiver claim by the Panthers. Sure enough, he was. And
that's
so
amazing.
Pretty interesting to see, pretty interesting to see kind of his path. So he was claimed on January 9th of last year, 2021, of course. Again, here's another example of a guy that, could have been great for Vancouver on defense, funny enough. They drafted him in the 5th round in 2014, but he didn't play for them really at all. He played all of his games in Chicago until he ended up in Florida. So 27 points in 122 games with Chicago between 2016 and 2019. And then in that 1920 season is when he really broke out. But it was in the American Hockey League, which was interesting. He had 26 points in 57 games with the Charlotte Checkers before being claimed. So then, January of last year, he gets claimed by Florida, and in that 2020-21 season, he fits right in. Pretty good production from a defenseman, 17 points in 43 games. Last year, 37 points in 71 games. So the production takes a huge jump. It's a career year for him. And this year he's already got 18 points in 29 games. And I know that the Panthers have been up and down. But man, thank God they got this guy to help them out on the back end, especially now without Mackenzie Weegar. He's turned into a solid top 4 defenseman. And he's only 26 years of age. They've got him locked up for another year after this one at a very good cap hit for them at $2.67 million. So, man, what a home run of a claim here by Bill Zito and the Panthers. And I got to tell you guys, I was really feeling good about this one, and I was really excited to share with you guys this one that just kind of popped into my brain and was like, I got to check this, but I'm pretty sure Forsling was a waiver claim by the Panthers, and it's just unbelievable because he's been a hell of a player for them. So, thoughts on this one, boys?
I don't remember him being a waiver claim, so this is a great find and a great memory on you, because I would have never came up with this one. But it's been great. And now that, Weegar's out, there's been a couple injuries on the back end. There's 2 Florida Panther defensemen that are thriving from it. I got to mention Brandon Montour every episode. It's in my contract. So I will mention Brandon Montour right now and how he's having a Norris Trophy candidate season. But also Forsling is living up to it and getting a lot more minutes without Weegar on that left side. So he's on pace for 51 points, but he plays a pretty good defensive game as well. So yeah, this is a great grab, and if they can lock him up after, even better.
Yeah, the first thing I thought of, Harp, when you were talking about a defenseman who was claimed by Florida recently, who was drafted by Vancouver, I was actually thinking of someone different. I thought you were going to say Olli Juolevi, because that was someone I considered as well, but he hasn't really panned out yet, and he's kind of bounced all over since then. But this is a really good pick by you, and what a fantastic waiver claim. We look at Florida's D right now, and imagine they didn't have him. First of all, they're not including Weegar in that deal to send him to Calgary. Not a chance, because without Forsling, that left side is pretty atrocious, not gonna lie. Forsling is right now, I'm just looking at the D pairings, and he seems to be paired with Ekblad on the top line. The second line right now is Mark Stahl and Brandon Montour, and then Josh Mahara and Matt Kierstead. So again, without Forsling, you've got a guy like Ratko Gudas out right now, but without Forsling, that back end is just not as scary at all. And even with him, I don't think it's that scary. So it just shows how important he is to that team. And that's what I love about these waiver claims, because sometimes, you claim a guy and then you waive him a week later. That happened, that happens all the time. The first one that comes to mind for me is when the Leafs waived Adam Brooks. He was claimed by, I want to say Vegas or maybe Winnipeg, and then the Leafs claimed him back. And, that happens all the frickin' time. So if you're able to claim a guy and get value out of him, like another example I'm thinking of is when...
Wasn't it Montreal, Brooks?
Oh, maybe, but he's been all around. Anyway, he has played for a Western team that I can't think of right now. But you're right.
He's with the Flyers organization now.
Yeah. So again, though, the point was that the Leafs ended up claiming him back and then waiving him again, and that happens all the time. But to find value for a guy is just incredible. You love to see that kind of stuff because it is a gamble at the end of the day. Look at a guy like Victor Mete, for example, who was waived by the Habs a couple of years ago, and everybody thought, the Sens just got an absolute steal, and then he can't crack that top six, and he's not in the lineup. And now, he's playing for the Maple Leafs, but only because their top six defensemen are hurt right now. So it's like, sometimes you think you're getting value and you're not. Other times, you have no idea what to expect and you find value. And I think that's what happened with Forsling there. They didn't really know what they had in him, but wow, he's panned out for them for sure.
I just looked up Brooks. We were all right. He went from Toronto to Vegas to Winnipeg to Montreal, something like that. So he was on all of the teams we mentioned. No, I like this one too because
he's with the Flyers now, right?
Yeah.
Adam Brooks. Okay.
I like this one too because it's another one that went full circle. Like he was drafted by Florida and then he gets claimed a few years later after finally blowing up in the AHL. And there's so many stories like that where teams, because of the way they're structured, they have to drop a younger guy, and then things change, and a couple of years later he goes on the waivers, and it's like, I'll take him. Not the same situation, but also last year was Nathan Bastian, who got picked by Seattle from New Jersey, and then played a handful of games, and then instantly put on waivers, and the Devils claimed him in a heartbeat because teams. It's the easiest move you can make because you're already familiar with the player.
100%. I wanted to mention a couple just because it's fresh in my mind as we're talking about disgusting waiver claims. By the way, the Leafs are definitely last place in terms of the amount of teams who claim players from Toronto. It seems like teams just laugh at it and they claim from Dubas and company every year a handful of players. But I wanted to bring up a couple years ago do you guys remember this? When Garrett Sparks was AHL goalie of the year prior, had a relatively good camp with the Maple Leafs, and he made the team out of camp. And they were expecting him to reproduce his AHL numbers. And to be honest, at the time, I thought it was a good decision, but it turned out very much not to be.
Pogi 2.0.
Yeah, because they had to waive Curtis McElhinney and Calvin Pickard, both of whom were claimed. I think McElhinney went to Carolina, if I'm not mistaken, and then obviously he went to Tampa Bay and won either one or two cups. I don't know if he was there for both. And then Pickard, I think, was claimed for, I don't know, he's claimed by somebody. But the point is, both goalies were claimed. Yeah, and the Leafs had Garrett Sparks, who was unplayable. So that's just how the waivers have, kind of screwed the Leafs over the years. That's one example.
I think the one cup was Elliott and Wedgwood were the backups in Tampa, weren't they?
Yeah, I think McElhinney has one.
Yeah,
he has one of them.
He did, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we this season in particular, we've seen some pretty interesting waiver claims, and today especially with Tolvanen going to Seattle, like we said right off the top. But one that I really liked, and I think he's looked really good there, is Juuso Välimäki, another former first-round pick, goes to Arizona, and I think because of him and some other young defensemen there, like a J.J. Moser, for example, oftentimes they'll do 11 forwards and 7D, and they placed Dyson Mayo on waivers today, which kind of surprised me because he had a good year last year and got himself an extension. But I think like a guy like Valimaki coming in on a waiver claim where he came in and played right away and finally got an opportunity that he didn't in Calgary, kind of forced them to go to this 11-7 like they've been doing for a while. So that's another one that really sticks out to me as well as an interesting one.
Mm-hmm. That was a surprise to me, see him go to waivers.
Yeah.
Another one too, while we're talking about this season, and like I think we're almost ready to wrap up here if you guys don't have anything else, but the one that comes to my mind right away is Magnus Hellberg. That guy has been everywhere this year, and I just pulled it up because I wanted to see exactly where he's been. So Detroit waived him, and then Seattle claimed him, and then Seattle waived him, and then Ottawa claimed him, and then Ottawa waived him, and Seattle claimed him, and then Seattle waived him, and Detroit claimed him again. So that guy's been all over the place, and as far as I know, that's where he currently is right now, is in Detroit. But what a God! Don't buy a house anywhere, like just a suitcase seriously. At that point. But
like I remember 2 years ago, Buffalo claimed Janssen Fjallby from Washington, and I think he was maybe there for a week, played one preseason game, and then they waived him, and he went back to Washington.
Yeah.
Oh my God! But and you know, like a lot of great stories. Like we talked about Forsling and, you know, just what a player he's turned into for Florida. But when you mentioned Hellberg, it reminded me of Anton Forsberg and his journey, because that guy's been everywhere too. And so he finally gets himself a landing spot in Ottawa and gets that 3-year extension. And certainly things have been up and down for him and the entire team. But you're always happy for a guy to finally get his landing spot and get an opportunity somewhere after just bouncing around like crazy.
Yeah, for sure. Last thing I'm going to say is that big announcement next week. Big announcement coming next week, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, definitely. All right, looking forward to that. And thanks, guys. Really interesting episode topic. This was a lot of fun. And so yeah, thanks for this. It's great to be back on, and looking forward to seeing you guys here over the holidays. And we'll chat again next week.
This has been another episode of Boys in the Booth with Harper Cody, Chad Melbourne, and Casey Abrams.